Hi, how are
Hey,
you?
good. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm so glad that you um, agreed to join us, and I'm really looking forward to talking with you today. Organ infections, pneumonia, common variable immu- immunodeficiency, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, pelvic vein congestion syndrome. Over 50 tests, you dropped down to 52.7 pounds. Feeding tube, heart PICC line, collapsed lungs, hospitalization. You coded twice, emergency intubation, was dying, antibody rich infusions, muscle degeneration, physical therapy. You had to relearn to walk, tank oxygen, intravenous immunoglobin. Wow, what a survivor. I mean, where to
It,
begin. So where are
it
you
was a
from?
lot.
Where are you from, and where did you grow up? Let's just kind of start there.
Well, I'm from Oregon, um, but I kind of grew up more in Utah. Um, I did intermediate school there, and I kind of have been back and forth from Oregon to Utah, but I just moved from St. George to Mesquite now. So, yeah, I'm now in Nevada boundaries, and it's fun. It's hot, but it's fun. I would go into the doctor and they would just basically say that I was abnormally small. I mean, I do have a twin and he's not small like I am. He's skinny, but he's not skinny skinny. And so it just kind of my whole life doctors were just like, "No, she's just small. Like there's nothing wrong with her." So it kind of got put on the back burner until like maybe I want to say high school days. And that's when it kind of I just noted little things like or noticed little things just I mean when I was out with my friends I'd be like, oh, I don't feel good, like, is this how you're supposed to feel? And they'd be like, that's kind of weird, like, and I'm like, okay, like but I just kind of put it off, like, because my dad was always the type like, you're fine, you're tough, and so it just never was like a concern up until I had my daughter, and that's kind of when my bad health like really went into gear, and so that was about 6 years ago. So it's
Okay.
I would say it started about 6 years ago.
So you're trying to just determine whether what you're going through is just kind of normal, and for the most part, it was kind of chalked up to be. But then things really changed, like during your pregnancy, after, or
I want to say like after, like I just never really felt myself, which all my doctors were like, that's normal, like, it's part of kind of postpartum. And so I kind of didn't think anything of it. Like I was like, okay, again, it's normal, like no
right.
problem. So, and then I had my son, and that's when I ended up, like his pregnancy, or I guess his birth was just, it was a nightmare. Like there was so many different complications with my blood and like just overly bleeding. And so that's when they looked into like my blood issue, my blood disease. And basically they were just seeing that I was getting a ton of blood clots. And that's what kind of started doctors kind of looking more into it. Like maybe she wasn't really just saying, maybe it wasn't normal to her,
Yeah.
and so that kind of happened, and it just gradually, I my son was, let's see, he was about 7 to 8 months old when I officially got sick. So it was kind of leading up to the months of me being sick. Um, I just kind of figured it was postpartum and all of that. Like I really didn't think anything of it, but I was getting sicker and sicker. And then eventually one day it like flipped like a light switch. Like I was like, okay, yeah, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
And but I was going in, every couple months, and they were like, no, Allie, nothing's wrong. You're fine. Everything's fine. And so nothing really like was showing up on tests until I was dying, like honestly, until all my organs were shutting down. Because once I got into the hospital, that's like everything was starting to already shut down. Like it was going fast. And so there was not really, at that point, they were like, oh, yeah, there's something going on. But it was also in the time of COVID. So they also thought it was COVID. My lung disease, it's your pulmonary, it's basically asthma times 1,000.
Oh, okay. That has to do
So
with
it's
the
a
lung.
lung disease.
Okay.
That's what the lung disease is. And that basically it isn't supposed to ever get better. I've done lung therapy for it. But obviously there's sometimes, I mean, I get yearly pneumonia multiple times a year, and so that I don't think will ever go away. I was at one point at stage 3, but because of, the lung therapy and medications that I have been on, it did help strengthen my lungs. And so it has gone down. I'm not at stage 3 anymore, but I'm kind of in between stage 1 and 2. It's kind of a mixture. They don't want to diagnose me with 1 because I'm still having symptoms of stage 2. So, but it's kind of a mix, but that's what the lung disease is. And it does cause me to kind of go on oxygen, not as much as I used to, which I'm thankful for, but it does make me go on oxygen every little bit.
And you said that you have like a blood condition?
Yeah, so it's basically it's a blood clotting it's a blood clotting disease where, or I guess it's a disorder, but um, it basically it means that there's not enough oxygen in my blood, and so it likes to just clot up. And I've gotten a bunch of stents all over my body. I mean, I've got them in my legs. There's one in my arm, in my stomach, in my uterus. I mean, I've got a 10-inch stent in my stomach that just basically that's your main vein, and if it's not open, it's going to start clotting up like basically elsewhere in your body. And so I've gotten a bunch of blood clots in my lungs. I had one in my heart, and it just like none of it has really happened since they've done the procedures. So I'm really grateful for the doctors I do have because they are doing something right, obviously. But that's the blood clotting disease. It kind of, if you have a blood clotting disease, depending on what you have, you usually should take medication for it. But all the medications that they were giving me were making me very sick. They were doing its job, but they were also making me sick because it counteracts like with the other diseases that I have. So it's very, you got to be careful on what you take.
Yeah, so those are helping just kind of increase the blood flow in those areas, but you're
Yes.
still at that risk of stroke or blood clots. And
It's all a huge risk. Like all of it will basically increase anything that I get. I mean, when COVID hit, that was scary. Um, but just anything, a sickness, like, I mean, anything can turn into anything. And that's the scary part, is that you just kind of got to take care of your body throughout the course of being sick, or it could turn into something worse. When I did get the feeding tube, um, that was right before I got on life support. And basically, they couldn't stop my organs from shutting down. Like, nothing was, because they didn't know what was wrong with me. I mean, I wasn't diagnosed until a few weeks on life support. And then that's when they were like, oh my gosh, this is it. Like, I had doctors come from Vegas and Salt Lake, and then there was one that came from Arizona. And they all kind of just came together and was like, this girl's gonna die. Like, all of her organs are shutting down. Like, and one doctor was like, we need to put a feeding tube in her. And so they did a feeding tube because every single time I would eat, like, I would just continue to throw up. Like, or it would come out the other way. Like, either way, it was getting out of my body. Like, it didn't sit within maybe 10 minutes before having to throw up. And so they gave me a feeding tube, and then they also gave me a PICC line because my heart was also not acting the way that it should have. Like, it was acting up in the hospital. And so they gave me a PICC line because they were putting medication straight directly to my heart, and then I guess throughout my body as well. But so that's why I got the feeding tube, was just because I was dropping weight like crazy. I mean, at the time when I did go into the hospital, I was about 85 pounds, But then once I was in there, yeah, I dropped down to 52. I was in diapers. Like I couldn't pee for myself. I couldn't do anything for myself. There was no getting out of bed for, I mean, I don't think I started getting out of bed until I was in there probably a month and a half. Like I was just strictly bed rest. I remember going to sleep one night and my body it felt like I got hit by a train. Like I that was the only way that I could explain it was I just had zero energy and again, COVID had just hit, and so I thought, oh, maybe I got COVID or something. And I woke up the next day and I had like the worst stomach pain, like I was just throwing everything up, and it wasn't COVID symptoms. Like I did have some COVID symptoms, but it wasn't like in my mind it was not COVID. And so um and that was after, a couple weeks of not really feeling very great. It wasn't like to this point, but overnight, like it was night and day. I woke up and I said, nope, I gotta go in. And I went into the hospital, and within maybe 10 minutes of seeing a doctor, like he was like, let's get an ultrasound. And he brought in an ultrasound thing. After getting the ultrasound, they immediately checked me in. They said every single organ is basically dying. Like it's all shutting down. And they were like, what did you do? Did you do drugs? Did you do this? And I'm like, no, like, I'm like, I didn't do anything. Like, there's nothing I did. Like, I couldn't think of any food that I ate that, like, that. And they were like, I mean, food wouldn't do that. Like, you have to you would have had to consume something. And I'm like, I didn't. So they ran a bunch of different tests on what was in my body, and they couldn't find anything. And so my body was quickly like right after all my organs shut down, it's like I got pneumonia right away. And then immediately after pneumonia, it was like my lungs started shutting down and they were filling up with water. And it was like I had a partially collapsed left lung, and it just like they were just filling up with water, and everything that the doctors did like wasn't working. Like it's like it almost made it worse to the next step. Like everything that they did, nothing helped except for like medicating me. That's like the only thing that would make me feel calm is just basically pumping me up with medication. They didn't know what they could do. I mean, it was just so up in the air. And then one night, I was talking to my dad and I said, no, today I don't feel good. Like I feel like I'm done. Like, and I was okay with being done. Like I had gone through so much, and I just said it like I'm good. Like I was like I feel in my heart that I'm done. Like that's just the only feeling that I had. And it was like I had no more pain. And then within maybe 30 minutes to an hour after getting off the phone call with my dad, he was like, I'm gonna call you in the morning. And I said, okay. And we got off the phone and I was about ready to go to bed and I coded. And that's how I got onto the emergency life support. So that's the emergency intubation, and they declared me that I couldn't even hold up my lungs anymore, that my organs were basically shut down at that point. They had to reboot my whole body. And so after they got me stable and they called my dad did come, but I had coded again in the time from him coming to the hospital. So when he did get there, he couldn't really see me because they were working on tubes down my throat. And I mean, there was so much going on. Like, I just remember getting glimpses of like being in and out of consciousness. And there was just, I mean, there was a lot going on. I mean, I thought for sure I was dead. Like, I was like, you see this stuff in movies. Like, I'm like, there's no way. And then it was weird because I had a guy who came in and he did a patriarchal blessing. And it was like, ever since he did the patriarchal blessing, like, it helped. Like, not just me mentally. Like, that's what he asked for was me to have positive thoughts. Because there's a lot of negative stuff going on in this room. And that's basically all I did. He left the room and he said on his way out, he said, if you can do anything, Allie, just make sure you have positive thoughts. He goes, I mean, honestly, he goes, you don't want to die when you're pissed off. Like, he was like, be positive, be happy. He was like, just be happy. And that was the game changer for me. I couldn't talk. I couldn't basically touch my mouth. So they ended up at night because it's a natural reaction to go and grab the tube out and just yank it out. And I almost did. There was one time I almost did. And so they ended up having to like tie my hands up to the bed because I kept trying to like yank it out at night. And basically, they gave me a clipboard and said, don't talk. Make sure you tell yourself, you're not going to die. You're going to make it through. You're going to get home to your kids. And so it was just kind of a different mindset I had to set while I was in that kind of position. I had to continue to say, I'm not going to die. I am going to get out of here. And doctors, they did tell me multiple times, Allie, patients don't really make it past this point. Like, I want to prepare you, for what's coming. And I'd be like, no, stop. It's okay. Like, I don't need to hear this. And he'd be like, Allie, I have to go through it from your doctor. I have to go through this with you. And so he would tell me, the chances of you making it off of life support, because once you get on it for an extended period of time, it's like your lungs will stop to your heart and your lungs, whatever it's connected to, will want to just stop to naturally not go on their own. They depend on like the machine to keep them going. And so he told me, he said, if your levels don't get better, I cannot take you off of this machine. And I said, I understand. I said, but they're going to get better. I said, don't give up on me. Like, they're getting better. And so he kept telling me, I want you to say goodbye to your kids. Like, I don't want you to miss out on that opportunity. And so I did. I sent videos to my kids, but I was telling him, I'm not going to stop fighting. I'm not giving up here. This is not the end of my journey. And so, and I had like a comfort ever since I talked to the patriarchal blessing. Like, I had like a warm comfort that it was going to be okay, regardless of how bad it looked. Cause it was bad. Like, I mean, I never imagined it was going to happen to me in my entire life, but I mean, it did happen. You're a fighter. Like, I mean, from growing up to now, he always told me I was a fighter. And so it did surprise me because, what I always went back on was, this is a movie. This looks like a movie scene. And they don't make it out of this movie scene. They're done. This is where you say your goodbyes. So that was kind of the shocker to me, was that I wasn't one of the ones who died. I mean, I made it through. And so it was a bit of a shock. I know my dad was pretty shocked because he wasn't expecting to even have me come back or something big for me in this life. And that's why I made it. I mean, I think it was like the night I coded, um, that, I mean, it was kind of those same thoughts. Like, I went back and forth and back and forth. I was like, this ain't real. Like, this is not, this is a joke.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
because it felt like a surreal moment. Like, and then I would always say, I mean, am I thinking these things because I'm on the medication that I'm on? Like, because I am drugged up? Like, is that like what but then it's like I would talk to my dad and he'd be like, no, I've never had like a situation like that. And so then that's kind of when I was just like, oh yeah, like I'm totally having just one of those moments. Like,
yeah,
and I don't think a whole lot of people really get those. But I was definitely like there was a friend of mine, and he would like reach out every once in a while when I was on, in the hospital, and he'd be like, is the Grim Reaper following you? And I was just like, no, dude, like he's close, like he's following me. And he'd be like, I can feel it, like, and I'd be like, no, I can feel it too. Like, I'm like, so I just had to basically put my mindset a little bit more straight, I guess. I don't know. I just kind of had to stay focused on what I wanted instead of what was really happening.
yeah. You knew that you. I mean, you're really close to that. You know.
Yeah, and I do think everyone gets that feeling. That's why they get okay with dying, or they get okay with like letting go, because I mean, I was at that point, and it gives you like a sense of, okay, you're fine. Like, you're fine. There's nothing more to worry about. It's the end. It's good. Like, and it's a calm, overwhelming feeling. It's a scary feeling, because of how calming it is. It
If
was scary. Like, I'm not gonna say it wasn't.
yeah,
It was definitely scary, but like, I don't know, it's weird once the situation just kind of it happens and it becomes like a reality and you know it's happening.
Accept it. Yeah, yeah. Come to terms.
It just kind of like there's no other thing that you can do except for yeah, it just you can accept it or and move on. You never know what someone's going through or what they have gone through or I mean, I look like out in public, I look like I'm a normal, you know, 26-year-old with two kids like
Yeah.
until they, you know, until I start can't breathe or whatever it is and then they're like, "Oh, she's got something wrong with her." You know, like it I mean, it just you never know what somebody is going through. Either it's, you know, bad health or, you know, um mental health, whatever. I mean, whatever it is, someone is going through something. So that's why I try to choose kindness in what I do and that's why I try to bring so much awareness and just say be kind because you never know what someone's going through. You never know what's on the inside that you cannot physically see. I did develop a lot of PTSD from just the hospital stay. Like when I push off going to the hospital as much as I can, like I will say, nope, I'm staying here, or like I'll stay here for another day before I go in. Like I'm very stubborn on going into the hospital, and I think it's because of that. So I did get a lot of PTSD from that, but it's more of like um, I've got like basically like what is it called? Nerve pain. I've got nerve pain, and that's like throughout my whole body. Like I get it mostly in my legs, but I also get it in my arms and my stomach and in my chest. Like, and also I some most of the time I sound like a smoker or like my lungs are just very like heavy sounding.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just kind of that's a part of it with COPD and the whole hospital stay. My lungs were very damaged, and I mean they aren't gonna go back to normal ever. And so it's just like that's also a part of it. I do deal with a lot of depression and anxiety along with everything that because it's kind of like a you know this is not fair kind of a thing because not everyone has something wrong with them. And so I always go back to, you know, why me? Well, I mean, I thought I was living a good life. I thought I was doing everything right, you know? And so it's like, why did my life take a turn? But then I deal with it kind of in a way, you know, this was meant to happen for whatever reason. I haven't found out the reason yet, but whatever reason, I got put onto a completely different path than what my life was going down towards. And so, because this has made me so that I had to basically stay sober for alcohol, for anything that I wanted. I mean, that wasn't the life for me anymore. The party life was done. It was over. And so I don't know if it steered me off because of that. But I also get so I have a lot of nausea as well. Like that just kind of comes, and it's mostly like if I'm eating too much at a time, like, and my stomach is just like, okay, like chill out or something like that, then that's when I'll get nausea. And I get a lot of headaches. That's what I deal with is really, really bad headaches that basically start at like the very top of my head and then they go down into like my temples, and then also kind of like in the back of my hairline. I get really bad headaches and then I shake really bad as well. Like it's because my blood sugar isn't very high. And so that just comes with it. It just it's one of those things. So I shake a lot and then it's like on top of that, it's I get sickness all the time. And that could be just like a simple cold, it could be pneumonia, but like every month I deal with like some sort of different sickness. And so, and I usually get pneumonia about 3 to 4 times a year. I've been fired from the last 3 jobs I had because I was stuck in the hospital and it was just I wasn't able to do my job. And so now I DoorDash. That's all I do for work. So it's basically my own time. I can't get fired if I have to clock out and run to the hospital or go to my doctor's appointments, whatever it is. It's been really nice. It's been a lifesaver, honestly.
flexible.
Um,
You can kind
Very
of
flexible.
choose your own schedule kind of thing, right? When you're
Yep, I really get to work whenever, and my kids come with me most of the time. So, I mean, my daughter's in school now, so she doesn't, but my son, he goes with me on my weeks, and I mean, I love it, honestly. It's a fun job. I'm ready for my car to not get so much um run around damage on it, but
yeah,
it's honestly because I do have my days where I stay in bed all day. I
yeah,
mean, it's just a given with when you have chronic when you have a chronic illness or any type of illness, there's going to be
yeah,
days. And so I do have my days. I mean, I try and work Monday through Friday, and then my weekends I'm home, I'm laying down, I'm not really doing much. And but I mean, some days during the week I don't make it to work. Like, and it is what it is. It just I just try to work as much as I can, and just know that if I push myself a little bit, then it's good enough. Because if I push myself too hard, I'm going to be like Nelly, where I just end up in the hospital. And then it's kind of, what's the point, you know?
yeah,
So I do get that way as well. Um, but for the most part, like everything is so controlled at that. And summers are better than winters. Winter times suck for my body.
yeah. The cold.
They don't like the heat or the cold. I mean, they live in the heat. And so my lungs do a lot better in summer than the winter.
Yeah,
But for the most part, I mean, I'm pretty blessed when it comes down to being able to work. And I mean, I don't think I don't have a husband, so I don't have anyone to come help me, you know, pay my bills for me. But and so I'm too independent to, you know, even get on any helps to kind of help me with that. But
yeah,
I don't know. I enjoy what I've kind of got going on because it does still allow me to go into the hospital if I need, or get the help from my doctors or whatever it is. I can put a hold on my job for my health. I mean, he almost got fired from his job the day I got into the hospital. I mean, not even the day, but like, I mean, the whole time I was in the hospital, he was calling out of work. He was missing his job. He was watching my kids. I mean, he just, anything that I needed, he was like, I got you. I'll be there in a second. And he would drive and go get whatever I needed and then bring it to me, or go get my kids, take them from one place to another. I mean, he didn't stop. Like he ran my life and continued to run my life,
is it? Yeah,
and put his on hold for me.
yeah,
I mean, he's very selfless, and probably the one person that helped me honestly get through that stay physically.
yeah,
Because he was like the only person that was seeing me in there. It was, I mean, a whole lot of the time not really anybody could. So
yeah,
but he was it. He's awesome. I think a lot of people who do have like chronic illness, they don't get what like the normal people get. They have to fight a lot harder to get what they want. Um, but I also think that, I mean, if they are also so deserving, and so I feel like they will get it eventually,
yeah,
as long as, you know, that's what their true intentions are, and what they're wanting. I like to bring awareness that, you know, the picture might be bigger than what it seems at the moment. That's what I try to remember, that it can be, your life can be bigger than maybe if you're having a hard time right this very second, or you know, the next day or the next week, whatever it is, you know, for a month or whatever. It it doesn't matter, you know, what you are going through physically. It can get better. If there's a will, there's a way, you know. And so I try to, you know, just tell people, don't give up, you know, not until your very last breath. Like, don't freaking give up, because miracles do happen. I mean, it's crazy that, you know, I am the way that I am now, and given the circumstances that I went through. And I'm grateful for the life that I'm still able to live, because I mean, it's been worth the fight. It's just, I mean, if I could have very well given up in the hospital, and probably would have ended up in a different circumstance.
yeah,
Um, and because I didn't, I think that's why I do have the life that I do have, because I never once, I mean, yeah, mentally I was like, oh yeah, I'm giving up, but I never gave up. If people would just not put that, raise the flag, and just give up, I think that their life could maybe be into a better and bigger situation than what they are feeling currently in that exact moment.